Kingdom Come Deliverance released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One back in 2018. It is an incredibly ambitious open-world RPG that blends in heavy simulation elements. It was met with a mixed reception, as while its ambition and passion are clear, it's also pretty rough around the edges. 6 years later, it's arrived on Nintendo Switch. While Kingdom Come Deliverance itself is a known quantity at this point, I was curious how well its scale and ambition could be adapted. So join me as we take a tech-focused look at Kingdom Come Deliverance on Nintendo Switch. For our comparisons today, I'll be putting the Switch up against the Xbox One version, which I got way back when this game first released. I'll be running it on an Xbox Series X via backwards compatibility, though I will note that this game never received a Series X update, so it is indeed still running the Xbox One version, specifically the Xbox One X version of the game from a visual standpoint. And as always, because I have to say it every time or someone in the comments will get upset, our goal is not to declare a winner, but merely to see how the game has been adapted to less powerful hardware. So let's start with image quality. The Switch version of Kingdom Come Deliverance makes use of both dynamic resolution and temporal anti-aliasing. This makes getting a firm resolution count very difficult, but I can give you some quick estimates, just remember to take them with a grain of salt. When docked, you're generally looking at something around 540p, give or take. Handheld, on the other hand, takes a pretty big hit. Once again, anti-aliasing solution in place makes it very difficult to get consistent counts, but I'd say we're down in the 360p range, and I believe it goes a lot lower in certain instances. It's pretty darn blurry. For reference, the base model PlayStation 4 and Xbox One ran the game at 900p. PS4 Pro ran it at 1080, and the Xbox One X ran it at 1440p. I did also notice that during dialogue scenes, there appears to be what looks like maybe a sharpening filter of some sort. It isn't always active, and really only shows up during scenes with dialogue choices, not even just all cutscenes. On the topic of cutscenes, I'll also note that most of the cutscenes without any dialogue choices resort to being entirely pre-rendered. This appears to be true of many of the cutscenes in the original version on other platforms as well, so this is by no means exclusive to the Switch release. It does mean you get a very jarring shift every time you go from pre-rendered, which are output at roughly the quality of those other consoles, versus real-time. Obviously, the image quality is very soft, and especially in handheld mode, it can be very impactful to the play experience. On the bright side, draw distance and environmental detail is higher than I would have expected. Staring off into the distance reveals some impressive, if low-resolution vistas. Likewise, closer to the camera, most scenes are quite densely detailed. Grass still feels full, roadways are littered with pebbles, normal mapped footprints, and plenty of other granular details. Real-time dynamic shadows draw in a bit closer to the player, but they're here, and honestly of pretty reasonable detail. Even screen space ambient occlusion makes the cut, filling in pockets of shade and tight spaces. Granted, that is very low resolution. Clearly, preserving the world detail was a priority, though it came at a heavy cost for resolution, especially for handheld play. Now let's talk about frame rate. Kingdom Come Deliverance targets 30 frames per second, on Switch and all other consoles. While I haven't seen it take any incredibly hard drops, it pretty consistently fluctuates between 24 to 30 frames per second anytime any structure or NPC is on screen. It is possible when moving through the open world for the frame rate to flutter right around 30, but even then, it rarely feels like it ever lands comfortably at its target. Most of the time though, this is just a 25 frames per second experience. And you can feel it. This was always a somewhat clunky feeling game, and at 25 frames per second, every input feels vague and imprecise. Performance appears to be essentially the same in handheld mode, though I wasn't able to get direct feed capture of that, so I'm just going by eye in that case. Kingdom Come Deliverance makes some clear choices to focus on preserving much of its underlying visual identity at the cost of performance. The end result is a playable but extremely blurry and unstable version of the game, especially for anyone playing in handheld mode. Were it up to me, I'd have loved to see them include toggles for anti-aliasing, shadow quality, ambient occlusion, and draw distance. This is a technique Witcher 3 eventually adopted, which allowed for significantly smoother performance and higher resolution for those willing to sacrifice graphical features to get there. I feel Kingdom Come Deliverance would be a perfect candidate for a similar approach. At the end of the day, I am impressed with what has been preserved, but I question the sacrifices made along the way. As to the game itself, those rough edges from 2018 remain pretty rough today. This is a style of RPG that is either going to be your favorite game of all time, or something you quit after 2 hours, and you're unlikely to fall somewhere in between. But if you do decide to try it on Switch, just be ready to squint for what is a functional, but extremely compromised version of the experience.
This video is made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.